management thinks about or how they select HMOs. But just before you respond to that, just to let everybody know that the session is being recorded, and you've got the option, obviously, to accept to be recorded, or if you don't want to be recorded, I think there's an option that allows you. Can you hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, right, fantastic. Right, so I was just talking about the fact that this session is being recorded. So, Mrs. Podicom, how do organizations select HMOs?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I think I'd like to take a leaf from Laura Femi's book and say thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure here to share ideas and to help people gain some clarity on this thing called HMO. So as an organization, when we want to select, can you still hear me, please?
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. So when we're thinking of selecting an HMO, of course, we look at their offerings in terms of what each plan covers. Most organizations tend to look at, okay, how much have we allocated for HMO services? And so we want an HMO that gives us the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. Which HMO has the best coverage under whichever plan the organization can afford. And I think we'll talk about that a little later in terms of what sort of things we consider. I mean, but I can give an example. If we are an organization that's 1,000 staff strong, for instance, our headcount is 1,000, and we know that HMO is statutory, we have to consider, okay, how much can we allocate for this in terms of operational costs and what have you. So, but ultimately, it's about service delivery. How are we by the HMO? Because we know that they are like the interface between us and the medical service providers. And so, how are our matters being treated when they arise? Of course, as an HR professional, we're in the business of people, and we know people have their idiosyncrasies, their little vagaries here and there. To be able to step up and be able to deal with some of these issues and matters as they arise, that tends to bring them into favor with us. And that's part of the research that we carry out where we want to select an HMO.
Right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that elaborate explanation. I want to, I think I will be pitching you somehow, and this is deliberate, against Comrade Oluwaseyi. Comrade, you heard Mrs. Podicom. She's so very eloquently described what organizations think about when they want to select HMO. I think I hear her talk about depending on the number of employees, depending on what the plans, offered by the respective HMOs are, and depending on what each plan covers. And she went on to talk about that. What I'm not sure I heard is that the organizations tend to involve employees in trying to decide HMO selection. Is that the kind of thing that you've heard your members say in relation to selection of HMOs?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Good evening.
Dr. And good evening, viewers. There's so many complaints on the side of workers. Even like as Dr. Oluwatoyin said, in selecting the HMO plan, some of these workers were not carried along. I don't just want to go to that. Let me go straight and tell you about the problems, the common problems, the common complaints that these workers normally give as a feedback to us. Number one, they complain that the HMOs don't pay the hospitals, that is the
medical service providers.
Service providers, thank you, MSPs. They don't pay them. As a result of this, by the time they get to these hospitals, they will be pushing them up and on, up and down. Go there, come here, do that. Workers don't like this at all. This leads to the second point, that it's like the HMO people, they don't update their record on time. Some of the time, people will get to those hospitals, they will say, look, your name is not here. They will say that your name is not here. So as a result of this, the workers will get fed up. Then the third one is that they waste their time. If eventually they will now attend to them by calling the HMO, trying to confirm, is it there? This is the name. What is the surname? Is he a girl? Is she a boy? Is she a girl? Is he a boy? All those questions. And the workers don't like this. These three questions, these three problems often come up all the time. So they don't like to go to HMO as a result of
Comrade, okay, comrade, you've made very, very strong points. Okay, some of them sound to me like allegations, and I'm going to direct them straight back to Mrs. Podicom. You heard the comrade talk for his members, and by his members, I'm talking about the workforce. He said that organizations do not pay HMOs, or HMOs do not pay medical service providers. That was the first strong statement he made. The second strong statement he made is that you don't update your records. The HMOs don't have updated records. And I suppose that they don't have updated records because the organizations do not update records back to the HMO when staff movements occur. How true is that?
Okay, thank you. So I think I'm aligned with Reid on some of the aspects that staff encounter similar problems whenever they get to the medical service providers. Now, in terms of whether or not the organization pays, I haven't had that experience. But everywhere I've worked, we do tend to pay. But you find that a number of HMOs, and they vary because some are more insistent than others, will not make medical services available to any organization who hasn't paid for their staff. So you get notifications letting you know that, oh, this hasn't been paid, et cetera, if it's not paid by ABCD time, your staff will no longer be attended to, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that any organization that's interested in having a good value proposition or consider an employer of choice will ensure that that is done as soon as possible. But in terms of the updating of the list, I think that that lies more between the HMO and the medical service provider, because when an organization, in my experience, I should say, when an organization pays for their staff, you are required to send a list of the staff that you want the cover to cover, and it's that list that the HMO has. Now, depending on their method or their format, some HMOs have asked the staff to have a primary hospital that they want to, attend when they have medical issues or emergencies, whatnot. And so anyone who selects a specific hospital as their primary treatment center should have their name on the list of that hospital. And that is the role of the HMO, not the organization or the HR of the organization. So if there's a question,
so what you've done, let me interrupt you respectfully. What you've done is that you have let us know that you are, you have no question to answer when it comes to lists not being updated, and you have very tactfully transferred that back to the HMO. And I will follow your cue, and I will go to Mr. Awole. Mr. Awole, why would HMOs be in that embarrassing situation of not updating the enrollee list to the various medical service providers within their network? What could be responsible for those failures?
All right. Thank you very much. A lot have been said. So, and I'm speaking to generally in terms of HMO. So one thing I just want us to understand is that there are different operations for different HMOs. So sending of lists to me, based on my experience, has been the old culture of HMO. So there are still some HMO that are doing that still send lists, but I would say 50% of the HMOs that we have, or let me say the top players now, they actually don't send lists again. And speaking on the HMO model, there are two systems which are being run by the HMO, which is the mode of operation. You know, this webinar is an enlightening, educative, let me say, program. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of information that I think HR managers and employers need to be aware of. So there's capitation and there's fee for service model. So every HMO operates on one, or some do they do the two. So if you're on capitation, that's the model that makes the HMO to send the list to the hospital. So they send the list every month because there's a limit. Capitation means there's a monthly and there's an annual limit agreement with the facility. And on this capitation, so the insurer will have agreed with a particular hospital, let's say like 4 to 5 hospitals, and send the list. And employees are only eligible to use these 4 or 5 hospitals, and the list will be sent to this hospital on a monthly basis. So that's for capitation. So to answer your question, so that's it's let me say the deficiency, or let me say the wrongful act of the HMO, because their duty is to send the list to the provider, which is the medical service provider, MSP. So monthly, or as the case may be. So if they fail in that act, that means that the HMO has failed in their own capacity. So that's for capitation. So most HMO now embraces the second model, which is fee for service. So on the fee for service model, HMO do not send lists. So I'm just explaining this because we have mode of operation. So depending on the HMO provider that the company, the employer has engaged with. So you need to know the kind of system that they operate, either capitation or fee for service. So if it's fee for service, they don't send lists. So everybody have a unique number, so like an enrollee number that everyone calls it. So with that number, you go to the hospital, and there will be like a numerous hospital. So you are not limited to like 4 or 5. You have like, let's say 100, depending on different location, and you can access those hospitals based on your plan benefit or plan type.
One of the things I've heard you say, is you try to split it into the capitation mode and the fee for service mode, and you blame the inefficiencies of incomplete list on those who choose to buy or purchase the plans on the capitation, and you think the fee for service seems to be more efficient. Great. But then you talked about authorization. And in my experience, I have had people, and I'm sure the comrade will probably bear me witness. I have had people who struggle getting this authorization number to be able to access care at whatever MSP they attend. The question now, and it is still to you, Mr. Awoleye, is uh, how do you expect employees? I will rephrase the question. Do you think employees who feel that they are delayed in accessing care for whatever reason that is not their fault, do you think they are entitled to seeking redress?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that question. Just permit me, I just want to say this before I go into answering that question. So it's just a point to the employers or the clients that engage with HMO provider. So to me, I will always be like, before you sign up with any HMO, it's always good to do your industry knowledge, do your industry survey. So try to know the service that the HMO is rendering, and find, if we invite any HMO to make any presentation, they will speak everything, all the sweet things, everything that their service is well. But beyond that, I will personally always advise that you can engage with the current users. So if you know any of their customers, you can engage with them. And also another party that will give you the true picture will be the provider, which is the medical service provider, which we call the hospitals or facilities. So they will give you the right, because that's the first major point. So once you choose the right HMO, I know every other thing will fall in place. So back to the question, which is authorization. So there are different ways and different processes the HMO client gives approval to their enrollee at the hospital. So there are different ways, like I've explained. So authorization just means giving the go ahead to attend to that member. So like you said, delay is the major challenge in HMO. That's the major challenge. And a lot of people have lost faith in HMO, or let me say health maintenance organization, because your company, your organization have paid for that service. So getting that service is now like difficult. A lot of people have this kind of scenario that you get to the hospital. Once they hear that you are HMO, there's this kind of expression or this kind of the thought that they just, okay, HMO, please stay one side, and if you are paying on the private out of pocket, to stay one side. So a lot of people do.
With the picture you've just painted, it lets me know that the situation is even a bit more dire for this poor employee that works in this organization, who's paid whatever it is, the capitation or the fee for service, at the point of care that is either being denied or delayed. All right. So I'm going to, the question, you haven't answered the question. I will probably chase you again to answer the question. Do you think they are entitled to redress? But in the meantime, comrade, can you jump in?
Thank you very much, Mr. Larry, Dr. Larry. When I was listening to my brother speaking, I have a lot of things inside of me to add. But the issue is this. I think the HMO should move beyond having an agreement with the management alone. Because some of the times, these workers don't even know the plan they were given to them. They don't know anything about the plan. Getting to the hospital, that is when they will be telling them, you are not covered for this. Can the HMO people, after an agreement, make a presentation? If not for all the workers, but for their representatives, and let them know that this and this are the plan that your management has chosen for you. So when you are coming, don't come with expectation of what has not been given to you. A lot of times, they get to that place to know that they are not covered. Even they will come back, can you imagine? They will tell me to go and do this. How many of them have they told that they are not covered for any test at all? When they go there, they talk about malaria or anything, they will say, okay, go and do your test and bring the thing back again. And I know of HMO, I don't want to mention any name. We have partnered with some of them in the time past, before this current one. And I think it's getting better. I mean, it's getting worse, not getting better. Because the former ones, they were very articulate in some areas. Yeah, we still have complaints. We know there may not be a perfect situation under this particular dispensation.
And Thank you, comrade. Comrade, let me move away from you just for a moment. I'll come back. I'll cycle back to you shortly. I'm going to Mrs. Podicom. Mrs. Podicom, Comrade Oluwaseyi has made a suggestion about educating employees with regards to the benefits that they are entitled to under the plans that your organization, not your organization, I mean the organization has purchased for them. Is it the responsibility of the HMO to educate the employees, or is it the purchaser's responsibility, which is management, to educate their staff?
Okay, so I was actually going to raise my hand while he was speaking, and he has made a good point, which I will support. I do think that HR teams or departments can take the lead in educating staff about what their coverage actually, entails, and what they have access to, what they don't have access to. In my experience, without any trying to paint anyone any specific kind of color, I find that a lot of employees themselves do not take ownership of their the HMO coverage. What do I mean by that? The truth is that your typical employee feels that once they have HMO, whatever the case may be, whatever the situation may be, HMO means that once I have a medical issue, it means that I'm covered for everything, which could range from your malaria, which you can take over the counter prescription for, surgery, right? And so they go with that expectation. If they're being told that your coverage only extends to this level, then there's this sort of pushback against the organization, saying, oh, you're not, what sort of coverage, what sort of plan is this, where I can't do A, I can't do B, I can't do C. Now, I do know that sometimes the medical service providers are culpable in not giving painting the entire picture for whatever reasons. The couple of reasons I've encountered in my experience, but that sometimes the HMO does their due diligence, but the medical service provider has individuals within the system who sort of make things more difficult for the employer, for the employee. But I would say that in addition to human resources departments educating the staff about what their cover really entails, the staff themselves can ask. I don't think there are not many. If you're a new staff, you have every reason to ask. If you're an older staff who has had experience with HMOs, you know enough to know that it's not everything that is covered. So really, the reason you have someone who is in charge of employee relations or anyone in HR for that matter is that you can pick up your phone, give them a call and say, I'm going to the hospital. This is what is going on. Am I covered? In
Right.
addition.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wadecom. I'm coming back. I'm not letting you go just yet. I'm not letting you go just yet. I just want to take a pause to welcome those who may be joining us midstream, who may not have started with us. You're welcome. So today we are talking about HMO and the workplace, optimizing value for employee covered benefits. And we have someone from HR management perspective, Mrs. Oluwatoyin Podicom. We have someone from the HMO side of things, Mr. Oluwafemi Adele, and we have someone from the employee perspective. We have Comrade Oluwole Oluwashe. Right. So back to yourself, Mrs. Podicom. I said I wasn't letting you go just yet. Earlier on, we talked about how organizations select HMOs, and you gave a few factors that they normally consider. The next question is similar, but different at the same time. How do you know what plans will be suitable for your employees? Given that you've got this large number of employees, certainly they won't have homogeneous medical needs. How do you know which plans to go for, especially as I didn't hear you talk about engaging employees in choosing the HMO and the plan?
Hello, do I go ahead?
Yes, sorry. Temitope, can you mute everyone, please? Please go ahead, Mrs. Podicom.
Okay, how do we know? All right, so there are several factors like we mentioned initially. And the truth is that you have some liabilities, and I'm going to be frank here, and I'm like you mentioned.
You may need to unmute. You may need to unmute. I think in the process of muting everybody, you may have been muted. Please kindly unmute.
Hello, I can't. She has to unmute me. I can't unmute myself.
No. We can hear you now. We can hear you. Now we cannot hear you. Bear with me. Temitope, if you can, I'm trying to do the same myself. Okay, is she okay to carry on?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, she's okay to carry on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
we
Yes,
can
we
hear
can.
you now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I started by saying that this is my personal opinion. It goes without saying that every organization cannot cover everyone for everything. I think we need to make that quite clear. And the truth is that similar to what you have in health insurance, there is a reluctance to cover people who have predispositions to certain diseases, which is why you find in medical insurance, for example, the older people are, the more reluctant insurance is to cover them because they associate certain high-level diseases with older people. All right. So you will find that when you're signing up with an HMO, one of the questions they want to find out is, do you have any pre-existing conditions? All right. And if the staff do have, depending on what it is, one has to wait and check whether or not it's something that is going to likely send them to the hospital multiple times. Now, what organizations generally have to balance that out is they give certain concessions. They could discretionarily support the staff by paying off some of those bills, or they could have a system where there's a soft loan issued to the staff that they can pay back conveniently. The truth is that you can't answer everyone's specific needs, which is why most organizations tend to have a homogeneous sort of plan for certain categories of staff. So you'll find that senior staff who are considered, who have a certain amount of value they give to the organization, are given certain plans and different categories of staff as part of benefits, more so to speak. It also depends on what line of business organization is in. So you'll find, for instance, in the airline, so one of my lives, my career lives, I was a flight attendant, cabin crew, and we were given good coverage because of the high risk that our jobs entails. And I dare say that maybe some senior officers in the organization may not have had the same degree of coverage because their jobs did not entail the same type of risk. Okay, so in such cases, you may consider looking at a specific type of plan to cover them because of the nature of their job. However you slice it, though, you cannot individualize the coverage. There needs to be some sort of criteria by which you classify categories of staff. Now, if individual staff have specific needs, then there can be a conversation on how the organization can support that staff to address their particular medical needs. But you won't find too many cases where you have individual staff being given in a specific or special or different kind of coverage based on their medical needs. It's
Right.
not
Okay.
impossible.
Yes, you've touched on another very delicate matter, at least as far as I am concerned. And I say it is delicate because it borders as well on ethics. Okay. And I'm going to direct my question next to Comrade Oluwaseyi. So you've heard that certain plans are given to certain category of staff. And Mrs. Podicom has explained why that is so. It could be the amount of value the organization thinks they get out of the staff. It could be risk, as she had used her own experience in the aviation sector. Question is, you've got the ears of your members. Do they feel that we are in a situation where we are practicing the law of inverse proportion, where the people who don't need the healthcare are the ones that are being disproportionately and inappropriately offered the covered benefits that they don't need, or put in other words, that they can afford by themselves, whereas the lower category of staff, and I say that very respectfully, who are more likely to need and benefit from it do not get the cover. Is that the situation that your members complain about?
Thank you, Dr. Larry. You know, I'm just from an organization, and I don't want to use that organization only as a case study here. I want to speak on behalf of workers generally, because we have some perspective. We have seen, we have met with some of their officers. I want you to know that there are some organizations that they don't even give senior staff, junior staff, or whatever. What they have done is that they have chosen a plan. And that plan, if anybody wants to improve on it, you can go and negotiate through the HR with HMO. They give every worker, all the staff, they give them the same thing. I have an organization where they give them the base one, the basic one, the one at the base, that is among these plans. Maybe they call one golden, they call one essential, they call this and that. I don't want to be particular about a particular organization anyway. And then they give them the base one, everybody. Then what you do, if you want more, is to go and add money after your negotiation through the HR with the HMO. So what they have given to one is what they have given to all. And then we have some organizations where they have senior, they have junior. It depends. It depends because you need to consider the population of the workforce. Number one, in a place where they have factory, they have about 5,000 workers. What will you give them? You want to give them the golden or platinum? No. So what we do is where we have 50 workers. The program says when you have more than 5 workers, and then when you have a junior, the same thing, you should have a scheme program for them. So if you have 50 workers and you have 5,000 workers, how do you go about it? So
okay, great.
The plan cannot be the same.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for that contribution. So what I think I'm putting together in my mind, listening to all of you, is that the practice is quite, variable, and you've got different organizations approaching it different ways, and there's no coherence in the way that HMOs, services are being purchased or indeed being offered. The next question is to Mr. Awule. In your experience working in this space for many years, are we in a regulated environment?
All right. Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. Regulated environments, I will boldly say no. Fine, we have regulator. We have the NHIA, which formerly called NHIS. But to be honest with you and looking at what my experience, there's no regulation. So different HMOs can just come up with different plans, different decisions. So the regulation is not firm. So that's what I can just say. So in the HMO space, there are a lot of things that is just going on. For example, like what comrade have said, hospital not paying the insurer not paying hospital, which is the HMO, not paying hospital, there should be a fine to be paid by the HMO. And a lot of things that are going on, or maybe in terms of, let's say, not covering the benefit that has been contracted by both parties. Let's say this thing is a covered benefit and the member gets to the hospital and that person did not get that service. So I believe in that space, there should be like a sanction or there should be like a penalty. So to answer your question, regulation, there's no regulation. It's not, there
Right.
is,
Thank
but
you.
it's not well controlled.
Yes, I get that. So thank you. So you say we are in a very weakly regulated environment. Mrs. Podicom, if you agree with that statement, the next question will then be for you. Would you say that the employers who are now the ones who purchase these services via the HMOs should be regulating the HMO space. Would you agree?
Or whether I think that the employer should be the ones regulating the HMO space.
When I use the word, yes, when I use the word regulate, I do not mean it in the strict legal sense of a government regulating. But I mean moderating. If you are going to pay for something in in an environment that is weakly regulated, would you be concerned for how you want to get value out of the money you spend, and put up a framework that you can use to make your HMOs provide better services?
Well, in an ideal situation, most definitely you would want everyone to do what is ethical, what is right, and what is proper, and what would certainly benefit the employees. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. But if we are honest, some of the HMOs who do better than others take advantage of the lapses that other HMO have to push their own services as being superior. And that is the truth. And if we're in a market where where there are different players, people are going to present themselves as someone who can solve your problems in this specific area. So if, for instance, I've been HMO where service delivery is lacking, another HMO who has a better service delivery format can come and take my business by saying, look, we are very responsive, you can get the kind of service you want from us, etc., etc. And if I look at their offerings and I see that it benefit my staff, most likely I'll go with them. So in that space, you by saying that we want to create a situation where some people need or have to do certain things, it's going to take competitive advantage away from some certain HMOs, and I think that because of that, people are happy to negotiate with whichever HMO they select to provide the best possible options for their staff, even if that means that that specific HMO is giving something that some other HMO is not willing to give. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that response. I'll cycle back to you very, very shortly. Let me take a dog leg to Comrade Oluwaseyi. Comrade, so we've been talking about surveys, either the HMO or at the point of accessing care with the medical service providers. And we've been talking about some of the difficulties or problems that we see day to day. Do your members think that management listen to them when they come up with these, observations, complaints? Do they feel listened to, or do they feel that they are just management would do what management would do anyway? It doesn't matter.
Well, it depends. What I mean by that is why we are there. We mitigate. And when they bring their complaints to us, we talk to the management through the HR. And that is what brings about changing the HMO sometimes. If you have entered into agreement with them for that particular year, the best thing is to be patient till the end. Then you can change the HMO based on the satisfaction of your members. The second, by that point, they may see that, oh, management is listening to them. But secondly, if you want to change the HMO and what you are getting is not what you are about to pay, the management will rather stay with the one they have and then keep on talking to them. An HMO will say they will promise everyone that they will improve. But guess what? In this particular economy, if you go to a particular pharmacy now to buy one drug, by the time you are going back next week again, it's another thing entirely. Even the price will be higher, more than 50%. And then people have no choice. It's like, well, I can't go out and buy anything. Let me stay with these people. Whatever you are going through with these people, officially you are still covered, then you stay with them. So some of the time they have misfeed. Whether we are listening, whether the management is listening, they don't know. They need to know that through the action. But even the management also is very limited, even in this area.
Okay, great. Thank you, comrade. Again, one comment begets a thought, begets a question, and leads us on in the conversation, Mr. Ole. The comrade said something about the current economic environment, and he gave a very loose example of a pharmaceutical item that keeps doubling its price within a very short time. And that is our reality. There is no shying away from that. What I think that leads many providers to do, and it's not just within the healthcare space, it would be anyone offering a product or a service impacted by these vagaries in pricing, is that they begin to look for how to cut corners. As an HMO, in what ways have you thought of checking the medical service providers to be sure that they don't cut corners dangerously to the detriment of enrollees or lives that are insured by yourselves?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Doctor, for that question. So one of the things that I believe HMO always do to checkmate, which is check and balance the hospital. One of it is they do like a provider survey, which is quarterly with all the medical service providers. So quarterly, they check on them on what they have done so far and what they can improve on. So they do have this meeting, either physical or virtual with them. So that is common with all.
So you're talking about meetings that they have. I am talking about something a bit more structured, a bit more formal. I have audits in mind. Do HMOs necessarily carry out audits? I'm talking serious audits with subject matter experts who know what they should be looking for with their medical service provider. If not, why not?
Okay, okay. I understand what you are trying to explain now. So in the every HMO, in the HMO space, there's this department that is called claims department. So they are like the auditors and they are like the checkmates. So they checkmate the hospitals in that space. So every time, so any bill that the hospital spends, or maybe any medication given out or any service given out, so the claims department audits them and they try to check if actually what they have given out is what they have been received, and also the benefit to what they have given out to the members. Talking about medication, we all know what the healthcare system is talking about now in terms of medication. And hospitals might want to cut corners. Maybe instead of giving a particular medication which is high, they may want to give a lower one. So what the HMO needs to do is to make sure that they call them to order and they come to a contractual agreement. So to the HMO and the medical service provider, there is a tariff. There's something that is called tariff, which is a negotiated amount. So this is what differentiates HMO user and the private user. So they can always come to an agreement. To the HMO, call them and meet with them and do these audits and see, okay, where or which area that they can come to an agreement to.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Mr. Aule. Thank you. Sorry, I'm butting into you. Mrs. Podicom, are you worried that your employees are or could be at risk of being given substandard treatment, not to talk of fake drugs. If you're worried about that, how do you mitigate it?
Yes, there is a concern, really, because it's a relationship based on fee for service. We give you your fee, and we expect that some certain measures are put in place to make sure that our staff are given what has been promised. In our own case, what do we do to mitigate that? Which is one of the reasons why I personally ask every employee to take a little ownership of the process, in as much as their health is at risk. If we don't know what's going on, then we cannot take any action. We can work based on what we are told, but if we're not getting feedback, we cannot take any action. And I think that I don't know whether it's an individual thing, it's a cultural thing where we don't want to kind of like put people in trouble. But I do know that anytime that any employee has come to the HR team to say this is going on in a specific hospital, or this is what I encountered, we take it up and we make the HMO uh, they promise to do. Thankfully, things like fake drugs haven't come up yet. I think the worst case we've had is somebody was being told to go and purchase the medicine themselves, which, well, while it seems inappropriate, it's actually better. But the truth is that that risk is always there, and short of going to hospitals yourself and start looking through the drugs, individually, it's challenging to be able to make sure that the things are being done as they are supposed to be. So that's why I would call on employees, in as much as everyone else is doing their part to make sure that this particular benefit is you have the best experience with it. They should please let the HR teams know the customer service of the HMOs know when something looks inappropriate, because the truth, or suspicious rather, because the truth is that we won't know unless we're being told.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, pardon me. Mr. Ole, do you have your hand up very quickly before
Yes.
I look in the direction of the comrade?
Okay, so in addition to what Madam Choin just explained, so something just came to my mind, which I just feel she has talked about it, but I just feel to reiterate on that. So one of the things that I noticed based on my experience in the HMO space is that the employee, or which we all call the enrollees, they don't get to study to know what the plan covers. So everyone just feel that with HMO, everything is covered. So it's a point that they need to know what they are covered for, because by the time you know what you're covered for, by the time you get to the hospital, you are aware, you are pre-informed of the benefits and the limits of what you have. And so if you are at the hospital, you are not claiming or seeking for what is out of the box. So I just feel to share this information, and to the employer also. So it's always good for them to. I'm saying this generally because most HMO, I'm just talking in the space of HMO. Most HMO, they don't tend to share what the plan covers to the enrollees, or to the members of the staff, because they feel that they don't want them to use it. But it's always good for the employer, which is the HR team or the admin, to make sure that everybody is sensitized. They call the HMO for them to come to do like an orientation section. It can be virtual, it can be physical, because information is key. If everybody is fully aware of what they are covered for, so I believe that will have mitigate all those challenges at the hospital. And so at this now, so it will now, the ball will now be to the HMO that, okay, this thing is covered, but I'm not getting that service. So I think with this,
Yeah.
we can always thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that contribution. And I think it's very valid. Again, if you're just joining us this evening, warm welcome to you. And thank you for choosing to spend your Saturday evening in this manner with us. We are looking at the topic of HMO and the workplace, optimizing value for employee covered benefits. And we have a representative from HR management side. That's Mrs. Oluwatoyi Podicom. We have somebody from the HMO space, Mr. Oluwafemi Adele, and we have someone from the employee side, Comrade Oluwole Oluwashe. Questions can be popped into the chat box at any time, and we will look at them shortly. We've got about 5 or thereabout minutes to the end of the webinar, and I don't know whether Temitope will be polling another question, but she's sent a poll earlier, and she can repeat it or pose another question, and we'll look at the poll at the end of the webinar. Comrade Oluwashe, just one very pointed question to you. If you or your members are able to change one thing about the HMO industry today, what would that be?
Well, I will answer that question, but before then, I wanted to raise my hand to chip in something when my brother was talking. I think I can do it now if I'm permitted.
Please carry on.
Yes, concerning the HMO, I want us to know one thing. I think it's the lady said that some of these hospitals will give the prescription to the employees to go and buy even their drugs. This is very wrong. We have seen it severally. It's very, very wrong. These workers, we are talking about senior management workers who can take care of themselves and who sees this thing as if it is about my life. Let me take it. You cannot compare with a factory worker who is in need of cash, who is in need of money. By writing to him to go and buy, he will not buy. He will resort to the local, whatever, we call it concussion, we call it agbo, and the problem will be there. Now, remember, the management and HMO, they have contact, they have business, and their business is the employee. If we are talking about optimizing, if the workers are complaining and they are not getting anything, the HMO also are all about what they want to claim, and employers are now after their own statutory that they have done what they're supposed to do, not minding the way it has been carried out. So the workers are suffering. Now, to your question, sir, if they would like to change something, they would like to change the plan. The plan that have been given to them. They would like to have the best of plan.
And what, yeah, I was just going to ask you, what do they have in mind to change it from what to what?
They are expecting the management to give more. They are expecting the management to lift up even the plan they are now to the next one, if not to the highest, so that they can get the maximum benefits. But unfortunately, management will show you the bill and they will tell you they have certain amount of money they can cough out for this.
Okay, so yourself and your members would want better covered, a plan that has wider covered benefits. I think that's what I hear you say. Great.
Let me quickly add something, sorry. On behalf of, I think they have done something very good. I'm not trying to, it's not a matter of patronizing them here or advertising. But the point is this, we have a standard clinic with a qualified medical doctor. They don't even refer everything to HMO. You're at work, factory, or anywhere, you have this, not even accident, you are feeling dizzy. They don't ask you to go to HMO. All they do, they refer you to the clinic, and the management buying drugs, original drugs, because we certify, we check. They minister to them. A lot of people have turned back from that place without going to HMO. The one they will now refer to HMO, it will be difficult for them to do. They still come back to say that, oh, one thing or the other. So if they want to change anything, they want the plan to be changed. Thank you.
Okay, loud and clear, we hear you. Mrs. Podicom, let's talk for in our last minutes. Okay, and I reckon we just have maybe 2, 3 minutes maximum about reflect on the duty of care that management owes their workforce. We know that buying HMO plan is perhaps the statutory minimum that employers should do for their employees. But the law of the duty of care demands more than that. And the comrade has shared one example of having medical service provision on site separate from the HMO. Obviously, I'm not saying all employers who can do that or even should do that. But my question is, even with you paying for services and plans from HMO, do you have or does management have at the back of their minds the concept of the duty of care that they owe these employees, at least to be sure that they get the value out of what you've paid for?
Yes, thank you. So in my experience, yes, management does recognize that there is a duty of care, and the HMO is just one of the several things that management has done in my experience. There's a field of HR that's called health, safety, and environment, and that speaks to things you can do even within the workplace to support employees in taking care of their physical and mental health. Speaking of mental health, we know it's a bit of a topical issue in this day and age. Organizations, in my experience that I know of, have taken certain steps in making sure that that is taken care of. One of the things that they could have done was to have on retainer mental health professionals whose staff can call in anonymously to and discuss some of the issues that they have. You have this hybrid work system, which has become somewhat mainstream now, where employees are only expected to be physically in the workplace a certain number of days of the week, and the other weeks they get to work from home. Obviously, that depends on industry, depends on the nature of work, and things like that. But also, those things also show that organizations recognize that by taking some certain steps, you are feeding into the health and wellness of the employee. And when you do that, obviously they're able to give their best at work. But I will also add, because one has to be responsible, there needs to be a recognition that there is a limit to what an organization can do. And I think that that is what some employees may not fully understand. While it seems on the outside that they could do more, that is just a perception. Some organizations have done a lot and are still doing a lot. I know of a certain organization, for instance, who, under the HMO system, rather than pay the HMO themselves, they give the staff the allocation and ask them to choose their own HMOs. So it's something like I'm being given a certain amount of money and told, choose the HMO that you want to sign up, but you have to show evidence that you've signed up with a particular HMO because it's a statutory thing. In other cases, you may have a situation where the management has had a conversation with the HMO where for staff who don't have a lot of dependents, they could bring in a parent or a relative into the system so that they can experience a cover when they don't have children, or when they don't have, or when they have relatives that have special needs and things like that. So organizations are conscious of the duty of care, and I think that it would help all of us when we all take our own responsibility for our own portion of the whole cycle of HMO, organization, union situation, and everybody does their part. The nature of human beings is that we always ask for more. If more can be given, more will be asked, right? But I think
Absolutely.
that all need to
Absolutely.
point of
Yeah,
view that
thank you so much. In fact, I wanted to ask you for more to continue speaking, but I checked the time and I realized I'm not at liberty to do that. Thank you so much, Ms. Poticum. I'm coming back to yourself shortly as we round up. Mr. Ole, final thoughts. And this is a bit of a trick question. Um, I know you work within the HMO space yourself. What would you want changed within the same sector that you've worked for many years?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So the number one thing I would like to change in the HMO space is just to make sure that service, so every enrollee gets the value for what they are paid for. Find this is insurance, is risk. So not every time the HMO will make profit. So because it's just like when you do your life insurance or maybe your car insurance. So HMO should have that understanding that okay, this is risk, it's a risk management. So the employer have put the risk of the members for them to for you to manage them. So one thing I would like to change is for all HMOs to make sure that they give that value to optimize the value for the employee covered benefit. What they have stated that is covered, they should cover it and give that maximum covered service to all the members.
What I think I've, thank you so much. What I think I've heard you say is that you are asking the operators within the HMO space to move away from the pure business model that they operate today to an enrollee-centered model that caters to the actual medical needs of the employees or the enrollees or the lives. It could be their dependents based on the plan that has been purchased. Thank you so much. So thank you so much to all of our discussants. Comrade Oluwole Oluwaseyi, thank you for your insight. Mrs. Oluwatoyin Podicom, thank you for your thoughts and contribution. And Ms. Oluwafemi Adele, thank you for all your participation and the contributions you've made so far. I think we are now at the point where I will be looking shortly at the questions. And then finally, I will ask each of you your final thoughts. Just one sentence, uh, about the question I want to ask. But before we go into the chat, Temitope, do you have the polls ready for review?
Oh, yes, I do, sir.
Right,
I'll
let's
start
start with
with,
the first one.
yes, okay. So I'll share screen so that we can, we can go along with me in taking in the results. Okay. All right. So I believe we can all see my screen.
It's
Can we all see my
coming.
screen?
Okay,
We can.
yes, we can now.
All right.
Okay,
So
so that's the first one.
yes, we got 38 responses, and the question, of course, was what improvements will you be most happy to see on your HMO plan? And we have 68%, that's 22 people say they would like to see improved covered benefits. 13% say they would like to see better network of medical service providers. 13% say again that they would like to see inclusion of occupational and wellness services. 3% say vision of branded medication and consumables, and 13% say improved medical emergency response services. Right?
I
Would you like me
think
to?
yeah, just before you go on to the second one, I think the only comment I
Okay.
can make on this is that it's very reflective on Comrade Oluwaseyi's thoughts about what
Yes,
members
I
or
agree.
workers want. They want improved covered benefits. And this little
Yes,
limited poll or survey is also aligned with that. Okay, can we go to the second one?
yes, please. All right. All right. So the second one we had certain responses, I guess because of the time that it was launched. And the question is, what challenges have you experienced with your HMO plan? 31% say concerns about cheap medications, 8% say difficulty in obtaining authorization to access care, 8% say difficulty in accessing specialists, that's another 8%, 38% say lack of comprehensive health care, and 15% say doesn't cover actual medical needs. Yes, so that's the risk of dermatology.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Temitope. And thank you to everyone who participated in the poll. I think you are all speaking in consonance. Even the second poll is still talking about comprehensive healthcare, which aligns, in my view, with the responses given for the first poll. Right. We have now come to the questions. How many questions do we have in the chat box? Temitope, are you able to access the questions in the chat box?
Monitor, please give me a few moments. Okay, so, all right, we have a question here.
Okay, I think just to save time, Temitope, don't worry.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
just quickly go through it. I think there's not a lot. The first one is by Kolapo Jelili. HMO were not helping us at all. I see it as another way of making employees to suffer. I'm sorry that is the view that some employees come away with. The second one is by Dr. Owojero. Do HMOs have phobia for vitamin C and multivitamins? I have had several experiences and with different HMOs where expensive drugs are approved and vitamin C is not. Just in one breath, Mr. Uleye, can you respond to that? Just in one breath, so that we quickly go on from there.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that question. Do you want me to take the two questions or just the last
No,
one?
the first one is not a question, is an expression of how they feel.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the second one, yeah.
The second one, okay, so that's from the doctor. It said phobia for vitamin C. Okay, based on my experience, vitamin C, vitamin A, they are classified under supplements. So supplements, naturally, they are not covered under HMO.
Okay, I think you've just answered it. Supplements are not covered, so it's not a covered benefit. Okay, yes. I think that's the response I'm looking to hear. Okay. The last question says, is from James Adebisi. Should staff members ask the questions regarding HMOs, or should organizations be proactive enough to educate employees? I think we've asked the question and we've answered it. And in that, in responding to that, we had said that yes, the employer rather should be proactive in educating their employees, but that we have responsibility as well as employees to find out what our plans cover. So there is that responsibility on both sides as well. We've got a last question, and I will struggle to take this one. I've had back from Dr. Oge Onubogu Eseke. I've had bad experiences with HMOs, but Leadway HMO is the best. Well, okay, so that is promoting a particular HMO, which I will, for reasons that are obvious, shy away from. But thank you so much for your question. So as we have our final 30 seconds, I'm going to ask all of you one question, and please just respond with one second answer. 1 second answer. I start with yourself, Mr. Oluwaseyi. Look into the crystal ball and tell me your thoughts in 5 years. Will we be in a better place than we are today with regards to HMO? Just in one breath, yes or no? Better place, worse place?
Well, let me quickly answer
one.
this. Let me quickly answer this by saying this. The first observation or question, rather, or contribution says it's like HMO is about making the workers to continue suffering. I want us to say no. I don't want us to go in that direction. They should not say we are doing it impossible to let know that this program, this system is for them. Because if you are not ready, you cannot produce even to the economy of the nation, talk less of taking care of your family. When they have
Right.
not patronized. So we
Fantastic.
are better.
So I think you're exactly. That was the answer I was gathering myself, that you are generally saying you think we'll be better off going into the next 5 years. Mrs. Oluwatoyin Podekam, 5 years from now, look into your crystal ball. Better off, worse off?
I think that by virtue of going, we will certainly be better off because we are promoting and our own health, etc. HMOs are not even careful. You find that organizations who are giving them in quote a run for their money in terms of taking care of their employees, various initiatives and programs that they put in place to keep employees conscious of their health and taking care of themselves. So I think that itself will make the HMOs sit up. And so I see a better relationship, better services offered in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you. Obviously, I can guess that I know your answer, Mr. Uleye. Better off or worse off in the next 5 years?
The answer is better off. Better off. So in just one sentence, so better off in the sense that HR personnel and employees are being informed now. They are informed. They are aware of the situation of in this space. So many of them know what is going and what is obtainable. So and there's this option of change. So if the HMO is not giving what they need to deliver upon, they can always change. And that HMO will tend to just lose their account. So every HMO is sitting up now. Everyone is trying to make sure that they hold on to their account and make sure that they keep that safe. So I know very sure in the next 5 years, we're going to have a better HMO experience. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You've all spoken with one voice to my last question. And that brings us to the end of the webinar today and indeed for the year. Thank you, everybody who has set time aside to join us this evening. A very big thank you to Mr. Oluwole Oluwaseyi. That's the first time I'll call you Mr. I would always refer to you as comrade otherwise. Mrs. Oluwatoyin Podekam, thank you very much. Mr. Oluwafemi Auleye, thank you very much. And to you, esteemed participants, I want to say a big thank you to yourselves as well. In terms of summary, we've seen that the situation today is far from where we want it to be. And we see that there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. But we realize that it's contribution from the three legs of the tripod that will bring about the change from the employee side, from the employer side, and from the HMO and medical service provider side. Everybody working together, and as all of you have rightly said, will produce the future that we want to see in the HMO space in the next 5 years and going into the far future. Thank you again and have a good evening. In the meantime, you can follow Medbury Healthcare on all our social platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook, as well as on our website, medburymedicals.com. We will certainly, for most of you, not speak again before the year is over. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and have a great 2024. Bye-bye for now.